Now, I don't have a lot of time to read the paper these days, but I at least try to stay current. I listen to NPR, watch PBS, NBC when I can, scan the headlines of the Times, even the Times Dispatch. And it occurs to me that what a lot of the news stories have in common is the word power. I mean, the word's used over and over in the current political debates, even in church news stories. I think the idea of power is right down at the center of these things. Power to control church property and finances, the power to say who's in, who's out of our communion. Power. And so I started thinking about that word power. What's it mean? How does power work? Who has it? And what do they do with it? And are there different kinds of power? Because on further thought, it seems to me that the kind of power down at the center of these news stories, power in that sense, is the power to control others, to control others' lives, whether it's political power, not to get into our sad current scene, or whether it's financial power like, Elon Musk, spiritual power like the Archbishop of Canterbury, again, star power, not to get into our current scene. There's power that controls other people, and some win and some lose because of it. And of course, all these folks, and others like them, live at the top of the heap, don't they? I mean, the top of the triangle, in the rarefied air of bodyguards and chauffeurs, swarmed all over by folks attracted to power like moths to a flame. But then, of course, power is a sort of slippery thing, isn't it? Because folks not only want to absorb a little of it, bask in its reflected glory, hoping a little will rub off on their own shoulders in the process, but they also want the thing for themselves. So then those with power become targets of pot shots and stabs between the shoulder blades. And I guess power corrupts too, doesn't it? But despite that obvious historical fact, I think you also have the perennial hope that if only the right people get into power, if only the incorruptible, the righteous ones, the ones on the right side who see things our way, the guys in the white hats, if only they get into power, well, then our world will be a better place. And so we campaign for them, stick signs in our yards, vote for them, and hope for a better day just ahead. Well, now it seems to me that something like this is going on in this morning's gospel scene. See, Jesus has told his followers over and over that the road ahead of him is going to be rough, going to be rocky. And he's headed for Jerusalem, that city that kills the prophets. And he's told them it's very likely he's not going to come back, that he's going to suffer and die. And if they want to follow him, they're going to suffer too. And they're likely to get very hurt in the process. But see, it just doesn't seem to register on them. I mean, I suppose they have heard his words, but you know how that is. Someone says something to you over and over, and you hear their words okay, but the words just wash over you because they don't compute. I mean, you just can't fit them into a scheme that makes sense. So surely, they don't mean exactly what they're saying. See, we've all probably done that, and on hindsight, you can play back the reel, and with the 20/20 of looking back vision, you can finally get their meaning. But at the time, the words make no sense, so they just don't register. Well, now, if you ask me, something like that's going on here with James and John. See, they've lived and traveled with Jesus, for about 3 years or so, and they've seen his power, have seen him raise up the dead, have seen him heal and heard him preach. I mean, he has power. And so whatever else he said to them, they've just skipped right over what didn't compute, since they just know he's going right to the top. And they want to be there with him, right by his side, wanting their own place in the sun, right by the source of power itself. Well, I don't know about you, but these guys always irritate me a little, pushy, looking for the main chance. But on the other hand, when you think about it some, I think James and John here are actually being pretty rational, reasonable. They had seen Jesus' power right before their eyes. And since they were two of Jesus' closest friends, the ones he's picked to go off with when he left the others at home, since they were so close and all, they want to make very clear here that they'll do anything it takes to stay right by his side. So then Jesus asked them, well, can you drink from the cup I'm going to drink from? Can you be baptized with what I'm going to be baptized with? And of course they insist, absolutely. So then Jesus begins again to tell them about reality. So he says, this is how things are, not how you want them to be. He says, see, I know how you want things to be. You want a reality where all the bad guys are gone, a reality where all the guys in the black hats get swept aside, all the good guys wind up in power. And you want a reality where you and I wind up sitting at the head table. And then I know what you want. When all the good guys are in place around the table, then you want the whole world to be redeemed from top to bottom. The triumph of trickle-down power. But Jesus says, unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. That's not the way it works. So Jesus tries again to tell them about God's power, about God's ways. He says, see, the reality of the kingdom, the rules of kingdom come, just don't work like the rules that run the world. No, we're working here by different rules entirely. So those who are going to wind up first in my Father's kingdom are not sitting at my right hand and at my left at the head table. No, those first in the kingdom are out in the kitchen, doing the serving, sweating over the hot stove, hauling the wood, setting the places, washing the feet of strangers, feeding the needy. Because see, he says, here's that new rule. That kingdom power writ large is standing right before your eyes. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Well, I think most of us have heard this gospel teaching so often, it just washes right over us. Falls on deaf ears, the last are first. Those at the end of the line get the prize. The humble are lifted up and the mighty are brought low. Blessed are the poor and the wretched of the earth. The first shall be last. But I think when you really glimpse this kingdom reality, when you really hear Jesus' words in this scene, when you really look at Jesus' life and Jesus' way, all of this simply flies in the face of the reality that you and I live in. I don't know about you, but things just don't seem to work that way in most of the world where I live. But here Jesus says that they really do work that way. So that's a puzzle. It's a mystery, isn't it? That's the mystery of it. Because he says that is the truth of the matter. See, here he is about to lay down his life for his friends. And when he's hung out to dry on a cross filled with splinters, it's not going to be James and John by his side either, but just two unknown thieves to keep him company. So I think Jesus is playing by some other rules here, some other set of rules. And in the end, he's going to suffer and die. Suffering not to get some reward, but suffering simply for the love of God. Period. Well, anyway, here he is. Finally, here he is, about to lay down his life for his friends. And if you don't fully grasp such sacrifice, you're not alone, because neither did James or John or Peter or any of the rest of them. But I bet maybe at least once in a while, you do happen to glimpse this kingdom reality a bit better than they did. Maybe it's because the living Jesus is still serving you and feeding you in your struggle to live a faithful life. And At the end of the day, I think the only example of kingdom power you're going to get is this: Jesus' life, Jesus' death, Jesus' resurrection. And now God's Spirit moving you to grasp this reality once in a while. But whether you make sense of it or not, I do believe serving and sometimes suffering in the process. I do believe such serving is how you transform the world, not from the top down, but from the bottom up. See, the power to serve is God's power, potent power. But the power to serve is a hard calling. Hard for Jesus, hard for you and me, because it's hard to be near folks in pain and stay healthy yourself. It's hard to know when to push someone away and when to hang on to them. It's hard to reach out to a person saturated with grief because it's awkward and you feel helpless. It's hard to set aside your own wants while you serve someone else. But see, crying with those who are crying is the way of the cross. Serving those who are in pain is the way of God's Son. So this morning, finally, as you come forward to eat the bread and drink the wine, I pray that you know, that you feel deep in your soul that the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, giving his life as a ransom for many. So, come to this table this morning and be served by your God. Come to this table and let God give you comfort and let God give you strength. Let God give you God's power to serve. Come to this table and discover that those who are truly on Christ's right and left die with him on a cross, following him and serving to the end. And then say, Lord, I want to do for you whatever you ask of me.